In Chapter 6, we're going to step away from the textbook somewhat because we're going to learn how to use a financial calculator as a tool instead of using the tables. There's various tables in Chapter 6 to do these time value of money calculations. But really, an accountant is more likely to use this calculator or use Excel. So we're going to start with the calculator and learn how to use it, and then we'll move into, well, how would we use Excel? Usually Excel is going to be more for doing a full-blown amortization schedule and not just a small snippet of a problem, which is what we're going to see in our demo problems today. Well, I'm going to use some of the brief exercises out of your textbook in order to go through this lecture. So let's get started. So let's say Chris invested $15,000 today in a fund, some sort of investment fund, that earns 8% compounded annually. So compounding means that every year you earn interest, and then the second year you earn additional interest. So to what amount will the investment grow in 3 years? So if I schedule it out, he's going to put $15,000 in the bank or some sort of investment today, and what will it grow to in the future? So the present value is $15,000. In the future, what will the value be, the future value? Well, we could do this manually. He's today putting in $15,000 at 8% for 1 year. And so at the end of the first year, he would have earned $1,200 in interest. So his total investment would be now $16,200. And here's where the compounding comes into place. So then in the second year, he has an investment of $16,200. And he's going to earn interest not only on the $15,000, but the $1,200 he previously earned. So now his interest will grow to $1,296. So his investment now at the end, the end of last year plus this year's interest, will grow to $17,496. And we could do that another year. $17,496 at 8%, times 1 year is $1,400. $1,400 plus his balance at the beginning gives him an ending balance of $18,896. So if we add up the interest is $3,896. So he would have earned interest over those 3 years at $38.96. So let's put what we know down here up on our time schedule. So at the end of year 3, he would have $18,896 in his investment. So the difference between the present value and the future value, right? Here's present. Here's what it grew to in the future, $3,896. And ignoring inflation, the only difference between a value today and a value in the future is interest. Okay? So that's a concept we want to keep in mind. Now, this wasn't too bad doing it manually, but what if you wanted to know 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or 40 years? That would become quite tedious, wouldn't it? So that's why we have the calculator. And so for this course, we're using the VA2 Plus calculator. Notice on the third row of this calculator, let me pull it up. Here's what it should look like. So here on the third row, we have these various keys. N is the number of periods. I/Y is the interest rate per year. PV stands for present value. PMT represents payment. And FV is future value. Okay, and then the other thing, as we go through all of these problems, always remember, clear out your calculator each time. I just do it by clicking on and off, and that tends to do it for me. Okay, so let's look at the next page. So on the next page, we're actually going to take what we did manually and use our calculator. So it's really the same problem, except we're going to use our calculator keys to solve for it. So let's do that. And by the way, if you just bought yours, you need to make sure that we only have one compounding period per year. A lot of times these calculators come already preset with 12 compounding periods per year because there's 12 months in a year. So in order to do that, hit your second key, then go down to here to PY. Once you hit the second key, that's really a toggle key. So what's I/Y now becomes this P/Y. So that's going to be payments per year. I've already got mine preset. Yours may say 12 here. So if it does, hit 1 and then hit enter. And then we want to quit, so hit second. And now what was CPT becomes the quit key and hit quit and you're back. Okay, so what we know here, let's kind of figure out what we're going to write. There's 3 periods. Interest rate is 8%. Present value is $15,000. There are no payments would be if there had been, similar payments throughout. There aren't any, so we'll put 0. So what we want to compute, I'll abbreviate that, compute is the future value. So let's go over here and put this all in our calculator. So we're going to hit 3 is in, 8 is the interest rate, 15,000 is our present value, 0 is our payment, and go up to this compute key, hit compute, future value. Now it'll show up as a negative, but there's our 18,896 if you round up. And it's a negative, I'll put it here as a negative, 18,896, because your calculator is reading it as if we put 15,000 in the bank today, or an investment, and then we'll take it out in the future. So it's cash in, cash out. So that's how it's reading it. Okay, so we got the same answer, right, as we did manually. Now, let's look at this problem a little different. What if it's the same thing, only interest is compounded semi-annually? Well, if it's compounded semi-annually, instead of 3 periods, we would have 6, right? 3 years times 2 compounding periods a year is 6 periods. Our interest rate is 8% annually, but that would be 4% semi-annually. So 8 divided by 2 gives us that. Present value, again, is 15,000. We don't have any payments. And compute your future value. So remember, clear everything out, turn it back on, and let's redo this. So 6 is in. 4 is our interest rate, or 15,000 is our present. 6 is our number of periods. 4 is our interest rate. 15,000 is our present value. 0 is payment. Compute present value, and we get this time 18,980 if I round it. $18,980. So here's the question. This actually, well, I realize, but it's not a negative. I'm just showing it as cash being withdrawn. So we get a larger amount. Why is that? Well, it's larger because there's more compounding periods. So there's more opportunity to earn interest on interest. So the more compounding periods we have, the larger our lump sum or future value will be. And again, notice I'm calling these lump sums because I have a lump amount today and a lump amount in the future. Okay, let's do present value. So there, previously we solved for future value. Now let's go the other way. What if we know we need $25,000, or Tony needs $25,000 in 4 years? What must he invest today if his investment earns 12%? So again, we know 4, we know 12%, we don't know present value, there are no payments, and future value is $25,000. So what we want to compute is the present value. So key that all, clear out your calculator, key all that in. Let's see what you get. compute, present value. And you should get 15,888 if I round up. And again, that'll show as a negative. I put this in as a positive, so this will show as a negative. And I could have put this in as a, if I had entered this as a negative, then that would show as a positive. Okay, so again, the difference between a value today and values in the future is 9112 is interest. Now, what if it's the same thing, but it's compounded quarterly? Well, if it's compounded quarterly, 4 years, quarterly would be 16 quarterly periods. An interest rate of 12, what would be the quarterly interest rate? We'll divide by 4 and you'll get 3. And then just enter in the rest of the information. And we want to compute present value. So here's the question, is this present value going to be larger or smaller? Well, let's go see. 16 is in, 3 is I, 0 is our payment, 25,000 is our future value, compute, present value. Up, I did something wrong there. I caught it, I don't know what I did. Okay, so 16, sorry, no, 16 is in, 3 is I, 0 is payment, 25,000 is future value, compute, present value, 15,580. Okay, and again that shows up as a negative. So the difference between a future value and a present value, this time 9420. And again, that's larger. Their interest is larger because we have more compounding periods. The interest is larger, so the present value had to be smaller, didn't it? I had to start with a smaller number in order to have a larger amount of interest compounding. Okay, well, we can also solve for other variables. And the first one, we're going to solve for the interest rate. So let's look at this one. Candace will invest $30,000 today. She needs $150,000 in 21 years. What's the annual interest rate? So we know present value and future value. We know N is 21. We're going to compute I because we don't know it. So present value is $30,000. There are no payments. Future value is $150,000. Now if you put in a calculator like this, it's going to show an error. Remember, either the present value or the future value, they have to go in opposite directions. So one of them needs to be a negative. So I'm going to put the future value in as a negative. So let's look at how that's going to, how we'll do all of that. Okay, so we have 21 is in, don't have it on. 21 is in 30,000 is our present value. We don't have any payments. And 150,000. And then I'm going to hit the plus minus. So hit plus minus, and that's our future value. Okay, compute the interest rate. 7.97 to roughly 8%. So then we can see, well, what kind of interest rate would we need? The other thing is we can solve for the number of periods. So Bo invests 10 grand a day. It'll earn 5%. How many years will it take to grow to 17,100? So this time we're going to compute in. We know the interest rate is 5. Present value is 10. there are no payments, and future value is 17,100. But again, when I go to enter that in, I'm going to use that plus minus key. So clear your calculator. 5 is I. 10,000 is present value. No payments. 17,100. Do the plus minus. Is future value. Compute in, and we get 11 years. So it would take 11 years then to solve for that. Kind of fun stuff, isn't it? You can see, very financial oriented sort of things that we're looking here. Okay, now let's go to annuities. Annuities are merely, annuity merely means it's equal multiple payments. If you have a car loan, that's an annuity. If you have a mortgage house payment, that's an annuity. When it's equal amounts, year, period after period after period. Now, there's two kinds of annuities. An annuity due is when the payment begins at the beginning of the period. Those aren't very common, because if you think about it, most of your loan, well, not most, just about all of the loan payments are at the end of the month instead of the beginning of the month. So an ordinary annuity is the most common. The payment occurs at the end. And so we're going to find that in accounting, typically you're solving for an ordinary annuity, but it's possible to have annuity dues, so you need to be able to solve for that as well. Okay, let's look at this. Sally will invest $8,000 a year for 20 years in a fund that'll earn 12% annually. If the first payment in the fund occurs today, what amount will be in the fund in 20 years? So this is annuity due, right? Because the payment occurs at the beginning of the period. So if we have an annuity due, there's certain things you have to do your calculator, and here's the instructions, and we'll go through those in just a second. So let's list out what we know. We know that N is going to be 20. The interest rate is 12%. There is no present value, right? She's not putting a lump amount here today. She's putting payments in of $8,000. So you're not going to, she's got 8,000 times 20, $160,000 she's putting in. I don't enter 160. I just enter the individual payment amount, and we want to compute the future value. Again, there's no lump amount today, so there's no present value. Okay, let's look at our calculator then. Well, first we need to set it for annuity due. So hit the second key, and then we want to hit begin. So payment becomes this BGN key. Oh, I turned it off. Second, begin. It says end right now, but we want to change it to beginning. So then we're going to hit second, and then this set or enter key, and that changes it to beginning, and then second, and then quit. Okay, notice now on your screen, BGN pops up in the screen, so that tells us it's anticipating a payment at the beginning of the period. And that's how you know your calculator is set for an annuity due. Now let's just enter what we have. 20 is in. 12 is I. There's no present value. 8,000 is our payment. And we want to compute future value. I'm going to put that. Start over again. Okay, and even if I turn it off, I still have the annuity due. So I have 20 is in. 12 is I. Don't have any present value. I messed up there, didn't I? Okay, 20 is in. 12 is interest rate. 0 is present value. 8,000 is my payment, and compute future value. So 645,590 if I round to that. Let's take a look at that again. Yeah, 645,590 as we round. Okay, so it's going to grow to that in the future. So let's look at what's happening. So 645,590 is our future value. Now that's going to cost Sally. It's going to cost Sally $160,000, right? That's her total payments. So she spends $160,000 over 20 years, and it'll grow to $645,490. So the difference is $485,590. That represents the interest she earned over 20 years. Ooh, that's a lot, isn't it? That's a real incentive to go out and put some money in an investment. Of course, it helps that she had a 12% interest rate. Okay, now we're going to switch gears. Same scenario, except the payments at the end of the period. So we need to go and clear our settings. So we'll start over. Second, and then go down to the reset, and then second, and quit. Oh, let me start that all over again. Sorry about that. Okay, second, and then reset, and second, and quit. I still didn't get that in. Oh, I know, I missed one, didn't I? Second, and reset, hit enter, and then second, and quit. There we go. Okay, so second, reset, enter, second, and quit. I kind of have a little trouble sometimes getting those keys to hit for me. Okay, so the same thing. 20 periods, interest rate is 12, no present value, $8,000 payment, and we want to compute the present value. So the question is going to be, will I have compute the future value? Will it grow as much or not? So what difference does it make whether we start putting money in today or we wait a year? Some of you may already have been anticipating what difference that's going to make. So 20 is in, 12 is I, 0 is present value, and $8,000 is payment. Compute future value. So this time we don't get as much. 576,420 is our future value. 576,420 is future value, and again she spends $160,000 to grow that, and she will earn $416,420 will be the interest that she will have earned on that. So why is there a difference? There's a difference because she's not investing as long, is she? She waits till the end of the first year, which really in effect kind of makes it only 19 years. So she doesn't have as long a period of time. That's pretty significant though. 485 versus 416. Again, the longer you invest, because of compounding, that interest starts growing exponentially down the road. Maybe not at first, but down the road it'll start growing exponentially. So there's a lot, again, that phrase money is time really plays a role here. Okay, now that was future value. Let's look at present value of an annuity. So Henry wants to withdraw $30,000 each year for 10 years. So he needs a fund set aside today so that he can withdraw $30,000 a year for 10 years. And while he's got that fund for 10 years, it'll grow 8% even though he's withdrawing from it. So how much would he need, to set aside today? This is a little bit, you could sort of say maybe he's planning to be retired for, hopefully he gets more than 10 years, but often this is a retirement situation. Here's his retirement date. He's going to withdraw $30,000 a year to live off of. It's not a whole lot, is it? But just go with it. So if he withdraws these amounts to live off, and he's only assuming he'll be retired for 10 years. All right, so 10 is in. He thinks he can earn 8%. We don't know present value. We're going to have to compute that. The payment is $30,000. And there is no lump sum. There's no, it's not growing. So it's not growing. There's no lump sum here. So we won't be calculating that. So enter it in. 10 is in. 8 is interest rate. 3, that's set up already. 10 is in. 8 is the interest rate. Don't know present value, but 30,000 is our payment. 0 is future value. Oh, sorry about that. Let me just, anyhow, key those in. You can see I'm having trouble hitting that, but you should get a present value of 201,302. So key those in. You're going to get 201,302. So let's look at, in the future, he's going to have payments, right, made out to himself, or he'll withdrawals. So his future payments are $300,000. It's costing him $201,302 today, so that's the present value. So the difference between an amount today and amounts in the future is interest. So he will have earned $98,678 of interest over the 10 years. Now the same thing, but what if he started withdrawing today? So here we have an annuity due. So he's going to withdraw $30,000. So, what's this going to look like? So go to your calculator, enter all this in, second, begin, second, set it, second and quit. Enter in the 10, and the interest rate is 8. Payments are $30,000. We don't know, future value is 0 because there isn't one, and compute your present value. So enter all that in, and you should get a present value of $217,407. So you should calculate that to be your present value. I'll just do this now to kind of speed up this whole thing. So anyhow, this time then, he has $300,000 of payments to himself. Those payments cost him today $217,407. So his interest is going to be less. It's only $82,594. And the reason there is less time to grow. These are withdrawals. So notice when we did this earlier, kind of go back when it was a future value. When it was a future value, we kind of had a little bit different scenario. And again, so he has less time. So he's going to start withdrawing today, so there's less money that he's leaving in because he started it today. And looking at that. So again, here when it was a future value and it was an annuity due, when we had an annuity due, when it was growing into the future, or when it was growing, when we start today, there was more time for it to grow. That's why we have a larger interest amount with the annuity due for a future amount. Now over here, our annuity due is down here for present value, but it's a withdrawal, so we're taking money out instead of taking it in. So that's the reason why we're going to arrive at a smaller interest amount. Okay, and then likewise on these annuities, we could also solve for the number of periods. So clear out your calculator, reset it to be an ordinary annuity. For Morgan, she's going to invest $16,380 at the end of each year. She wants it to grow to $100,000. She thinks she can earn 10%. How long will it take? So we need to compute the number of periods. Her interest is 10. There is no lump sum today, right? She's going to make a payment, $16,380, and it needs to grow to $100,000. We've got two different numbers going in, so one of them needs to be in the future, payments in the future, and a future lump sum. So one of those needs to be a minus. Okay, key that in, and you should get your number of periods will end up being 5. Okay, then also we can calculate interest. On this one, we know we have $793.15 today. We need to be able to make payments from that of $75 for 12 years. What kind of interest rate would we need? Okay, so N is 12. We're going to compute what the effective interest rate on that loan is. Present values, $793.15. Payments are $75. The N, I'll make that a plus minus, and there's no lump sum. Whoop. There's no lump sum in the future. So key those in, and you should get an interest rate of 2%. Okay, but don't stop there. 2% seems awfully cheap, doesn't it? However, these are 12 monthly payments. So we just saw for a monthly rate. So 2% times 12 months would give us an annual interest rate. Not so good, is it? 24%. So that's not such a great deal as it looked like off the cuff. Okay, and then I like to sometimes just then do some things sort of freehand with your calculator. So one thing, let's just kind of say, what if I want to buy a $20,000 car? So, a real practical thing with your calculator is figuring out a car payment. So let's say we borrow $20,000 for a car, a 3-year loan, and maybe the current rate for cars is 9%. 9% annually. Well, how would we calculate the interest rate? So, when you key in your calculator, car loans are monthly, right? So 3 years would be 36 months. Interest rate, 9%. 9% divided by 12 would be 0.75. And present value, we're borrowing $20,000 today. We want to know the payment, and there isn't any future value. So let's go to our calculators and figure that out. So 36, number of periods, 0.75 is the monthly interest rate, 20,000 is our present value. We don't have a future value. Compute my loan payment. So roughly $636. Okay, so fun stuff. So 636, let's see, what is that? 636, we make 36 payments. So how much total are we paying for this car? 636 times 36 payments is roughly $22,896. So the car cost us $20,000, which is present value. So our interest cost would be $28.96, wouldn't it? So again, we paid a total of $22,896. We borrowed $20,000. So principal is $20,000. Our interest paid. Then the rest is interest, $28.96. How about a mortgage? Let's do longer. So that's just a 3-year loan. So 3-year loan, let's do 9% again. So let's say we have a $200,000 house. So we borrow $200,000 for a house. Let's make it a 30-year mortgage. And let's also do 9% APR and see what we get. It's pretty high, but let's just kind of see what happens. So there, 30 years times 12 would be 360 months. Again, interest rate is going to be 0.75. Present value, we're borrowing $200,000 today. And what would our payment be? No future value, nothing. So let's go to our calculator, clear everything out, and let's see what we get. So this time, what if n is 360? Sorry about that. Let's start over. 360 for n, and 0.75 is our interest rate. 200 is our present value. 0 would be future value. Compute payment 1609. 1609. And by the way, that's not your whole house payment because this is just principal and interest. You still probably have to set aside taxes and insurance. Usually the mortgage company requires that. So 1609 is our payment times 360. What do we get for that? So 1609 times 360. We're going to pay $579,240 over the life of that mortgage. Remember, we only borrowed $200,000. So ouch, ouch, ouch. There is the total interest cost over the life of that mortgage. So here we can see very much time value of money. We spent more on the interest than, we paid more for interest than the house itself would be used a 30-year loan. We won't take the time, but if I converted that back to 20 years, this would be reduced significantly. You might play with that to see what if you did a 20-year loan, how would this what kind of difference would that make? Okay, so that kind of sets you up. You have some assignments. You will not be using Wiley Plus because Wiley Plus uses the tables in your book, and we're going to use the calculator. So do your assignments, really attempt those. I will post solutions to those, and I'll also create a video recording for some of them. I won't explain how to do all of them, but just some of them. Again, you're going to have some delayed gratification. Make sure you're able to work these, math problems because, you'll be tested over this. Good luck. It's fun stuff.